Welcome back, everybody, to the TWSN live show on the Right Way Sports Network YouTube. I'm your host, Daniel Alameda, and I'm here with my guys. As always, we got Max. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Obviously, we got some March Madness games going on, and we had the UFC pay-per-view over the weekend. And obviously, the Dolphins made a few moves that were intriguing. So it's been quite a busy sports week for me. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we got our boy Will. Will's been bringing the fire recently, man. I keep saying that, but I'm excited to see what Will's got today. Will, how you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited. Unfortunately, we're a man down, but you know how it goes. The show goes on. Looking forward to the debate that we're going to get into right off the bat, and all the other subjects as well, of course.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And yes, we are missing our boy Jake Circus today, but he'll be back on next week. But as always, the show goes on. So before we get into the show, make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, right? We do this every single Tuesday night. We got video breakdowns, we got draft content, we got mock drafts, all that stuff on our YouTube channel. And you can also find us on Instagram, on Twitter at TWSN. We're everywhere, right? We have a mobile app, we have a website, all that good stuff at the Right Way Sports Network. But let's start it off, right? Let's start off with some energy, and let's start it off with the Falcons. They're right now at number 4 in the draft. Do they draft a quarterback or do they not? We'll let you start it off.
Yeah, so I firmly believe that the Falcons should draft a quarterback for a multitude of reasons. Number one, I think of their options, it's going to be Fields, Lance, most likely Fields and Lance. I doubt Wilson will be there. I think he'll go to the Jets, but we can throw him into that conversation. But the point is, all three of those guys, I believe, will be franchise quarterbacks, assuming that they have good coaching and development and they have a good environment around them. And if you're a team drafting in the top 5, you got to assume that you're going to be able to put, the pieces around them to succeed. At least you hope you do. So I think all those guys are suitable future franchise quarterbacks at 4 for the Falcons to pick. Number 2, I mean, when you're drafting in the top 5 and you don't have a long-term QB, you should probably heavily look into drafting a quarterback, assuming you're in the top 5 or even really top 10. And the Falcons do not have a future plan right now. I mean, they don't have an option on their roster. It's Matt Ryan, who's 36, 37 years old. He could still play, but he's not going to last too many more years. And then number 3, I mean, Matt Ryan, when you look, is he still a fine quarterback? Yes, but I honestly think he's going to take a significant dip. I think he already has taken a bit of a dip, but I think he's going to take even more significant dip as he gets to 37 and 38 years old. Also, his cap hit for the next 2 years combined is $91 million, $48 million next year at age 37 and $43 million at age 38. That's terrible. I mean, in my opinion, like, you can argue that drafting a quarterback at 4 is hurting them, putting other pieces on the defense and offensive line, because the Falcons, the bottom line is they do have a lot of areas of need. But I think what would hold them back more is keeping a quarterback who's has a $91 million cap hit over the next 2 years on that roster. I mean, because the bottom line is there are only a couple ways that you can add a franchise quarterback to a roster. Drafting, there's a reason we see teams trading up into the top 10 and drafting a quarterback, maybe when they don't even necessarily need to. There's another option on the team, like the Cardinals, but they still drafted Kyler Murray anyways, because the quarterback, really the only way is to getting a guys in the top 10. The Dak Prescotts of the world, fourth round pick Dak Prescott, that doesn't come around very often. That's not available every single year. And so I just think when you're in the top 5 and assuming that, the Falcons, we don't know if they're going to be top 5 again. I mean, they may improve next year. We'll see. They had a lot of, as they do, they blew a lot of big games. So we'll see if they could potentially finish. If they finish some of those games, they'd have a better record and they might be in like the 10 to 12 range. But they lost those games and now they're top 5. And I absolutely think their options, they're going to have a good option. It's going to be the 4th remaining quarterback, I believe, because I think the top 3 is going to be a quarterback. But if it's Fields or if it's Wilson or if it's Lance, I think that they should draft him and add defensive pieces in free agency and the remainder of the draft as well.
Will, so basically, I mean, like, I agree with you, right? Like, there's a lot of things you said. You make some great points. But what you guys aren't understanding, and for a lot of people who are picking the Atlanta Falcons who have to take a quarterback, they're not understanding the fact that, okay, they went out, they got a new head coach. They went out, they got a new defense coordinator. You have talent on this roster to succeed right now. And what people don't really understand is NFL franchises head into every single season looking, how can we win this year? How can we win now? How can I better my team this season? So with the Atlanta Falcons on your roster, and also something, they changed his cap hit. They restructured his contract. I believe he's only making his cap hit's only $20 million this year. They restructured his contract. So over the next 3 years, because he's still under contract for 3 more seasons, he's not going to be making that much money. So that's a benefit to his team around him. So if I'm the Falcons, I'm sticking with Matt Ryan. I'm seeing what Arthur Smith can do with Matt Ryan, because we saw what he did with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. We saw he completely revamped that offense, and he made Ryan Tannehill look like a top 10 quarterback. So Matt Ryan right now, he's not like a guy like an Alex Smith where he's later in his career. He's not like a guy who's dwindling down. He's still a top 15, top 20 quarterback. He can still win with the talent around him. But now it's all about seeing what this new offensive mind can do with Matt Ryan. So that's why if I'm the Falcons, everything's pointing to them sticking with him. And also, you can't rule out them trading down. I think that's a smart move. Trade down, get some more talent, because you need some linebackers, you need a safety, you need a cornerback, you need a lot of pieces on this team. So if I'm the Falcons, I am sticking with Matt Ryan for a couple more years because he's still good enough. I'm sticking with him for a couple more years and just acquiring the best player available, which is
so what's the succession plan? There needs to be a succession plan, right? So this year is the perfect opportunity to take a guy like Trey Lance, who has all the talent in the world, and we know he has sky-high potential, but the issue is he didn't have enough playing time in college, especially this past year. He only had one exhibition game. We know that he's a guy that's going to need that 1 to 2 years of development on the bench. And we know that Atlanta can provide that for him, because to your point, I do think Matt Ryan has a little bit left in the tank. And I think that Arthur Smith can bring that out of him. Now, because of the cap hit that Will was explaining earlier, I don't think it would be wise to let go of Matt Ryan. That's why I think it makes sense to keep Matt Ryan for 2 years, let the contract, kind of play itself out, take a guy like Lance who can sit for a year or two. And I think, let's point to next year, right? The quarterbacks next year, they don't even compare to this year. Sam Howell's a good player. Slovis from USC is okay. But besides those two, is there really much going on there? There's not really too many prospects compared to this year. You got a guy like Trey Lance that has that sky-high potential. He's going to need that time to develop behind Matt Ryan. And because Arthur Smith is there, I think that the contingency plan makes a lot of sense for the long term. And while I think, trading down could make sense, I think they'd be wasting a really, really great opportunity to take a potential star quarterback to succeed Matt Ryan in 2 years.
Also, the reality is you can add defensive pieces through free agency, through rounds 2 through 7 in the draft. So you can replace those pieces a lot easier than you can draft a future franchise quarterback. Quarterback is the most important position in the NFL. That's not any breaking news. And when you have a chance to get your guy in the top 5 or in the top 4, like the Falcons do, and you have a guy who in Lance or Fields, I think it'll be Fields personally, because I think Lance is probably going to go to the Niners. But Justin Fields is perfect. I mean, he's a Georgia guy. That's where he went to high school and grew up. You're right. I think Matt Ryan, if they drafted Fields, they would still start Matt Ryan next year. I'm not going to.
But see, okay, listen.
Next couple years, you can replace those pieces in other ways. You can't necessarily draft a surefire future franchise quarterback, drafting later in the first round or in free agency. It just doesn't happen as often.
So something that I've researched this, right? So I look back the past 10 years. I'm like, okay, everybody that's drafted a quarterback in the top 10, did they already have a good quarterback on the roster? Did they have a guy of the caliber of Matt Ryan? And the answer was no. Every single quarterback, whether it was last year's draft class, 2 years ago, every quarterback on the roster was either older, like an Alex Smith, where they drafted Patrick Mahomes, or they had a young guy who wasn't good, like a Josh Rosen. So everything that's pointing right now with the Falcons is pointing to them sticking with Matt Ryan. Arthur Smith.
Daniel, that's an invalid point. That's an invalid point, Daniel.
Alex Smith was 33 years old at that point, which is 3 years younger than Matt Ryan.
Was he talented? Was he as talented as
It's
Matt
not a
Ryan?
question of
He was
talent.
fine for them that year. He was a good quarterback.
No. Well, that's not true either. That's not true either. Look, the issue is these teams were horrible, and that's why they were in a position to draft franchise quarterbacks compared to the Falcons, where a lot of it was a mixture of injuries and underachieving.
Exactly.
So that's why but that's why I think this is the perfect opportunity for the Falcons to take a franchise quarterback, because like we've agreed. I'm not arguing that Matt Ryan can't get it done with this team, especially if they fix some holes.
Yes.
But that's the reason why you have a contingency plan, because once the contract expires and Ryan gets even older, and he's obviously going to regress at some point, and he's already shown signs of regressing. That way you can let go of him. You have the contingency plan, and you can keep winning games with a roster that has underachieved for a long time. Unlike other teams that have no choice but to take a franchise quarterback because they're just horrible. So that's why I think it's a unique opportunity, and the Atlanta Falcons shouldn't pass on it.
And listen, I'm not saying it's not the right move, because if I'm in their situation, I wouldn't necessarily pass up on the quarterback, but I can completely see Arthur Smith heading into a new system, heading into a new place where, you said it, they've underachieved. Last year, they had talent. Last year, their passing offense was good. But let's say what happens if you trade down, acquire more assets, and you get a running back like a Kenneth Gainwell, because that's something they've severely missed. They've needed a running game. So I just don't understand why you got 2 top 10 receivers on your team. You can go out and draft a running back, and you can see what this team can do. I believe that Arthur Smith is confident enough in his abilities as a coordinator, as an offensive mind, to see what he can do with Matt Ryan. And I think, I'm not saying it's not the smart move to go out and get a quarterback, but everything right now is pointing to them not drafting one, because we can all agree right now, if there's one team in the draft that's in a position of power, it's the Atlanta Falcons, because the Panthers are going to be calling them. The Patriots are going to be calling them. Teams that need a quarterback are going to be calling the Falcons. And that's why I think the Panthers, a team, could give them a good enough offer for them to be like, okay, we got Matt Ryan for another 3 years. Let's build through the talent, and let's see what this quote unquote underachieving team in the past can do in the future.
But here's what I don't understand. I completely agree with all of your points about Matt Ryan and the team improving, but I don't understand how drafting Trey Lance would hurt them in any way and would hurt that progression.
It allows them to do both. Like, Matt Ryan will still be their starting quarterback. You can still, we can still see Arthur Smith with Matt Ryan for 1 to 2 years, or for even the remainder of the contract, while also having a legit, surefire future franchise quarterback.
Exactly.
So, and it makes sense, right? But I just think right now, if you're in their position, you either go Matt Ryan or you start the quarterback. And we've seen Justin Herbert. I wasn't on the train of starting him right away. I wasn't on the train of starting Tua right away. Tua took 8 weeks, and boom, now he's in. Justin Herbert, right away he's in. I think even with Trey Lance,
he wasn't even supposed to play if it wasn't for a punctured lung. Let's be honest.
Even with Justin Fields, even with these guys, I think you start them in year 1. And if most, you start them next year. I just don't see a reality where you trade away Matt Ryan this year, or you trade away him next year. I think
you think Trey Lance is ready to start week 1?
I think he's ready to start this year at some point. You throw him, but week 8.
At this point, sure, but week 1, no. And you don't want to put him on a team that needs him to start week 1. That's why it makes sense for him to go either to the 49ers or the Falcons, where they're going to have a starting quarterback to put ahead of him. Frankly, I think Fields is the far better prospect, at least now. That's why I would take Fields at 3 for the 49ers, especially since they're in a position to contend for Super Bowls. I won't get into that till later, but Trey Lance makes sense from a long term, because I totally agree. For the millionth time, I completely agree with what you're saying. Matt Ryan will I'm confident he will improve under Arthur Smith. He has the weapons to improve. Yeah. And if they get a run game, that's going to add an entirely new element to an offense that's been lacking a run game since Devontae Freeman, regressed, I guess, and got hurt. Yeah, sure. But I think if you take a guy like Trey Lance, to Will's point, you're playing both sides. So you're being able to, you have the contingency plan, but at the same time, Matt Ryan's going to be good enough to score points. And I think there's other ways, and you can use other draft picks on filling some of those holes.
Yeah, and I will say, the direction that they're heading is, I agree. I think they should draft a quarterback, but the way it's looking right now is the Panthers. I think the Panthers might be willing to give up a haul for the 4th overall pick to get a guy like Lance or Fields. So I'm not going to necessarily say the Falcons are losers if they just trade down and get a ton of future assets. I can't really say that they're losing, but I just hope that they can get another future franchise quarterback in another way. You just gotta hope.
And I just think that this Falcons team right now, especially, as I said, Arthur Smith, I'm excited to see what he can do there. But Max, you touched on the 49ers a little bit, and let's talk about them, right? This past weekend, they traded in the number 3. They traded their number 12, this year's 3rd, and 2 future first-round picks for the number 3 overall pick. Max, who are they taking? Are they taking Justin Fields? Are they taking Trey Lance? What do you think is their plan as of right now? What should their plan be?
Well, we were talking about it before the show, right? Let's address the elephant in the room about the Mac Jones nonsense. It's a smokescreen, guys. They're not going to take Mac Jones at 3. He's not talented enough to be a top 3 quarterback in this draft or top 3 pick in this draft or in any draft. I'm sorry. So let's get that out of the way. So now, Trevor Lawrence is a lock for 1. I would say Zach Wilson's becoming a lock for 2. So those 2 guys are gone. Now the question is, who do you want more for the 49ers? Do you want Fields or Lance? Neither one would be a good pick, but here's my thinking behind that. Jimmy G was good enough to take him to Super Bowl as a game manager. He didn't have to really do too much. He just had to make the right throws at the right time, which you got to give credit to him for. But I would say the defense really carried the load there, and the run game on the offense. So we know that Jimmy G, if he's the starter next year, as I expect him to be, they should be able to win games, right? They're going to win games with Jimmy G because that's just the way that they're constructed. But for Kyle Shanahan, we know that he can get the best out of any quarterback. We've seen it during his time with Washington when his dad was coaching Robert Griffin III and he was the coordinator. We saw it when he was the coordinator for Atlanta, and we saw it, obviously during his time with the 49ers. I just think that Trey Lance is too much of a long-term bet, whereas Garoppolo, the thing with Garoppolo is, yes, he'll win you games, but if you really think he's underachieving or you want to get rid of him for a high draft pick, say middle of the season, a guy like Justin Fields is more ready than Lance to be put in as the starter and win you football games. And I think Justin Fields gets a ridiculously huge amount of unnecessary, unwarranted hate for no reason. The guy just made it to the national championship game. In my opinion, right now, talent-wise, he's probably the second best quarterback of the draft. Zach Wilson just has a lot of potential and has a lot of things that people are intrigued by. But that's a perfect situation for quarterback and for team. I wrote it on my mock draft. If you guys haven't checked it out, go check it out on the website. Justin Fields is the kind of guy where, yes, I do think he could benefit from, developing on the bench behind a starter. But the 49ers have such a well-constructed roster that, say Jimmy G starts the first 6 games of the season, if Jimmy G isn't playing up to the standards that the 49ers would like him to play, you could always trade him or bench him for Justin Fields. And I think you're going to get just as much, if not better, production from this guy because he's had all the experience in the world working with, star receivers and playing in big games with Ohio State. So I think it's the perfect pick for the 49ers and for Justin Fields. Perfect situation for him.
Max, I completely agree. And I want to make this very quick, and I just want to let you guys know. All this is right now is Kyle Shanahan, and this is my theory, right? My theory is you see him in the Super Bowl. They lost the Super Bowl. And obviously, I was one of the guys. You can't blame that solely on Jimmy Garoppolo. You just can't. But when you see a Patrick Mahomes on the other side, you say, I want one. You say, I want one of those guys. I want one of those guys that can create plays. I want one of those guys that can extend out of the pocket and be a superstar talent. And that's what Kyle Shanahan did. He gave up 2 future first-round picks. He gave up a haul. And why do you give up a haul? You give up a haul for a superstar talent, and that's not Mac Jones, right? Mac Jones he's a great talent. I love the guy. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in this class, but he's not a guy you trade up to 3, 4. So Kyle Shanahan, he understands that, one, winning a Super Bowl is much easier with the quarterback on a rookie deal. Let me say that again. It is much easier to win a Super Bowl with a quarterback on a rookie deal, which is why Patrick Mahomes won it, which is why Russell Wilson won on his rookie deal. A lot of these quarterbacks are the young quarterbacks with talent around them, and that's the 49ers. They have a ton of talent around them, so now it's all about getting yourself a young, talented quarterback to build your franchise around. Kyle Shanahan wants to build a dynasty, and how do you do that? With a star quarterback, and that is why he traded up to number 3. They won't take Mac Jones, but whether that's Trey Lance or Justin Fields, they'll take one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I concur. This is obviously like a move for a quarterback. I don't think anyone can really deny that. And I don't have a problem with a guy like Kyle Shanahan, one of the best, coaches really in the NFL when it comes to X's and O's, making an aggressive move like this and getting the guy that he wants. Like if Shanahan feels that the one piece to win the Super Bowl is getting a upgraded quarterback, maybe in the long term, then by all means, go ahead and do it, Kyle Shanahan, because I absolutely believe that whoever you draft, you're going to develop and you're going to get that fullest potential. And that's exactly why I actually believe Trey Lance. Now, I would agree that Justin Fields, I would have him higher if I was ranking the prospects, but I think Lance is a better pick for the Niners because I think Lance's ceiling is actually higher. He just has those tools to be an elite guy. Fields also does as well, but I don't know. I think the ceiling is a little bit higher. I think Fields is more pro-ready, but I think Lance's ceiling is higher. And because Kyle Shanahan is as brilliant as he is, I think he's going to have the ability to bring out that ceiling out of Trey Lance. I think that's honestly what he wants. And even if he picks Justin Fields, like, I'm not going to complain. And that's an excellent pick. But I don't know. I think Lance is I think there's a better chance that Lance goes to the Niners because he sees the tools and he sees what he can do with, Field or Lance's ability to go out of the pocket, get mobile, make those huge throws on the run. I mean, all these guys can just throw dimes and dots down the field, but I think Lance is just a little bit above Fields in that area. And I think Kyle Shanahan knows what he can do long-term with a guy like that. So for me, I would put Trey Lance over Justin Fields for the Niners in general. I would probably still take Fields. That's the way I see it going out. And then if they do draft Fields, I don't know. The way I see this playing out is he's going to feel like, or if they draft Lance, he's going to sit out for a year, and then you see what happens this year with Jimmy G. I think realistically, I'm not sure if the Niners are going to win the Super Bowl with Jimmy G. And if they don't win the Super Bowl, then Jimmy G, I think he'll be gone. And I honestly think the Patriots, I said it a few weeks ago, Patriots could be a realistic trade destination. I could see it happening next offseason. But they said Jimmy G is their guy. I'm not really sure how much I truly believe that, especially if they draft Fields, who's a pro-ready guy. But if they draft Lance, I trust that he'll sit for the year and it'll be Jimmy G for the entire season.
You just hit something I really want to focus on. I mean, for our viewers, right? The biggest thing is smoke screens, right? This is the time of year where you are going to see smoke screens. Teams aren't going to show you their cards, even if it's reported by a source. They won't show you their cards. It's all an NFL organization. They're just playing.
Remember when sorry to interrupt, but remember when the Cardinals, they tweeted out and they were very adamant that Josh Rosen was their guy, and they said Josh is their guy, and they drafted Kyler Murray. So it's just like you really cannot trust what we're hearing from sources when it comes to the NFL, because at the end of the day, you don't really know what's actually going on inside this room.
I think we're also seeing it with the Bengals. I mean, people are saying that the Bengals may take Jamar Chase. I don't see why they would. I think they're 100% either taking Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell. Personally, I think it's Penei Sewell. And I think they're just doing that as a way to, I don't know, just trying to bait some of the other teams into thinking that they're not going to be taking one of those linemen.
It's all smoke screens, right? And you just have to be careful for what you're watching. And it's all, the biggest thing is teams go best player available, but you also see what they have what holes they have in the roster. And I want to talk about a team because, we just talked about the 49ers. It seems like we know they're going to go quarterback. Let's talk about the other team in that trade, the Philadelphia Eagles, right? The Philadelphia Eagles traded back from number 6 overall to number 12. And I just want to say my piece real quick, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. The Eagles have no clue what the hell they're doing. No clue. And that's the bottom line, right? I think they're at a point in their organization where it's get as much talent as you can because they don't know where they're going. Right now, you're giving Jalen Hurts a chance. That's you have to give Jalen Hurts a chance. Give him 1 year, test them out, but they don't know who they're going to draft, right? And if you don't know who you're going to draft, why are you going to stay at number 6? Which is why I think it was a great move. Trade back to number 12, where you're going to have your pick of linebackers, whether that's Micah Parsons or JOK. Your pick of cornerbacks, JC Horn, Patrick Surtain. Your pick of wide receivers, maybe Jalen Waddle falls. Your pick of offensive linemen. At number 12, they're going to have any option that they want. So any direction they want to go, that's where they'll go. As of right now, though, I have no clue what the hell they're going to do. Will, what do you think of the trade?
Yeah, so out of all the 3 teams involved, the Dolphins, the Niners, and the Eagles, I think the team that lost the most is the Eagles. I'm not going to say that they just got fleeced or anything like that, because next year, assuming the Colts make the playoffs, which if Carson Wentz is healthy and the whole injuries are not a factor, I think the Colts are a safe bet to make the playoffs next year. They're going to have 3 first-round picks. Their own, they're going to have the pick that they got in this trade, and then they're also going to have the Colts first-round pick. So you're absolutely right. They're stockpiling draft assets, and I don't blame them, because they're obviously headed for a rebuild. They're shipping out assets, so it's good for them. But where I do have a problem with this is at 6, you had a perfect opportunity to draft one of the big 4, at the weapons: Kyle Pitts, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and Jalen Waddle. Not necessarily all those guys were going to be available, but chances are you're going to have your pick out of 2 or maybe even 3 of those guys. Now you're traded down to 12. I don't know. I think Waddle might be there, and maybe Devontae Smith could fall, but I don't really know. Chances are there might not be one of those 4 guys. And I honestly think what the Eagles had to do was get a big-time weapon to put with Jalen Hurts. And that's the biggest point I want to make here is the Eagles are not doing a very good job of putting trust into Jalen Hurts. And I think that's a mistake on their part. Not saying that Jalen Hurts is like for sure going to be their guy, but at the very least, you have to put trust in him from an organizational standpoint. You have to put him in the best possible situation and see if he can succeed. And by what they're doing, I just don't think they're doing that, trading down, potentially not getting one of those big-time weapons to help him out. Also, it's known that they wanted to trade up to 2 and to 3. And what was that going to be? To draft a quarterback. And they've that information has basically
look, I think the Eagles actually know what they're doing in a weird way, because let me explain.
Yeah.
By trading, I completely agree that they need to get a weapon for Jalen Hurts. There's no question about that. But I think they know they probably will end up with one. Let me explain.
Yeah.
Jaguars, Jets, 49ers, and probably Falcons are going quarterback, right? Even if the Falcons don't go quarterback, we know they're probably going defense, definitely not wide receiver. They already have a plethora of receivers. They're banking on Cincinnati to not get a receiver because they know that the Miami Dolphins are most likely getting a receiver. They know that the Detroit Lions are most likely getting a receiver. And they know the Carolina Panthers might be intrigued in trading for a quarterback, or they may end up with Kyle Pitts, something of that sort. So they're like, okay, we know for a fact the Dolphins, probably the Lions, and probably the Panthers are going to go for weapons. Panthers are the wild card going for quarterback. Broncos are not drafting another receiver. Dallas Cowboys are not drafting another receiver. And the Giants, yeah, they look like they might have been drafting a receiver before they got Kenny Golladay and Kyle Rudolph, but not anymore. I think they now need to focus on pass rush, right? Or some other areas that, it could be even offensive line. I don't think they're going receiver. And that leaves you with the Eagles. Perfect spot for Jalen Waddle to fall at 12. I think they know more than you think. I think they think that Cincinnati is not getting a receiver. I think they're banking on Cincinnati getting an offensive lineman, while they understand that Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith, or Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle may be off the draft board. They know that one of the receivers will be available at 12 most likely. And hey, if Kyle Pitts somehow falls, I'm sure Philly will have no issue with taking Kyle Pitts at 12.
So that's just my issue, though. It's like, yeah, I agree. Jalen Waddle could be there, but I wouldn't rule out like the Giants stealing Jalen Waddle from him at 11. Even though maybe offensive line might be a better pick for them. But my thing is, you're just at 6, you had a guaranteed chance to have 2 to 3 of those guys at the weapons department available. And now at 12, you might have one of those guys. I highly doubt that 2 of those guys will be available. So you might have one. So you're just taking a chance. And to me, that's just not, it's just overall, they're just not signaling confidence in Jalen Hurts. And I think that's a mistake from an organizational standpoint, because you have to put the most confidence in your starter next year.
I'm in between both of you guys. I think my biggest issue is the rumor that came out about them wanting to trade up, right? Because this has been their issue all along with Carson Wentz. They didn't give him the confidence. You had Nick Foles on your team. You drafted Jalen Hurts. You never gave him the confidence that he's your quarterback one. Now Jalen Hurts, there is no confidence. They're not showing that they're confident in him as their quarterback one. But in the same token, I think it's smart, right? You trade down, because no matter what, if you trade down, you're going to have a weapon. And if not, I can guarantee you that they'll be fine taking a linebacker. They'll be fine taking a cornerback. Who knows if they even take a wide receiver? We don't know. I mean, it's the Philadelphia Eagles time and time again. Last year, they picked Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. They've done this multiple times. Picked Marcus Smith in the first round, a linebacker, right? So we don't know where they're going. They don't know where they're going. But I think the biggest thing is they're acquiring talent as much as they can, because they know they're rebuilding, and they're going to give Jalen Hurts a shot, regardless of whether they drafted Kyle Pitts at number 5 or they drafted Devontae Smith at number 5. Or at number 12, they take Micah Parsons. They will know what type of quarterback Jalen Hurts is next year. So with that being said,
point out this comment for me, and this would be really interesting if they, because you're right, they do 3 first-round picks next year. You have the ammunition to trade up potentially, especially, we talked about the NFC East last week. I think the Eagles, we can say, are maybe probably the last team. I mean, none of us have them winning the division. So they're probably going to be last in that division, but we'll see. So they're not going to be all that great next year. Jalen Hurts, we don't really know. The jury's still out. It's probably leaning towards the side of he's not going to be their long-term guy.
Yeah.
So they're going to have potentially draft capital to move up and get a quarterback, whoever it may be. And that's 2022 draft class is, I would say it's not as top heavy as this one, but I do think there is some solid depth there. So we'll see.
The bottom line is, I think they know that they need as much talent as they can. And that's why next year they'll have 3 first-round picks. So they know they're not winning anything this year. So run it back with Jalen Hurts, see what he can do, and get as much talent and as many assets as you can. But with that being said, one of the final NFL topics I want to talk about real quick, Max's Miami Dolphins. Max, what are your thoughts on them trading their trade, right? They went from, I believe they had 6, or where are they now? They're at 6.
Yeah, they went.
They went from 3 to 12, got the 2 firsts and a third, gave up the 22 first-round pick that they got from San Francisco, and then they swapped picks in the later rounds, and then they went back up to 6, and then that's when the Eagles got.
What does this, a more specific question? What does this trade signal for Tua's future with the Dolphins?
It signals that his future is pretty secure, at least for this year. I think, we weren't ever considering drafting a quarterback at 3. I think frankly, they're probably going to get the same guy they were going to get at 3 at 6. And that's going to be probably a wide receiver, in my opinion. I think it's going to be Jamar Chase. Say Jamar Chase does get drafted by the Bengals. I think they have a backup plan by taking either Kyle Pitts or Devontae Smith with the number 6 pick. So I think they're 100% getting a weapon on offense with that pick. So think about it. They got a first-round pick and a third-round pick to move back 3 spots. I mean, I think it's just masterful by Chris Greer, the GM for the Dolphins. I think they obviously know what they're doing, and they're showing a sign of trust to Tua. But at the same time, let's not forget that they're stacking up on even more draft capital. So if Tua, knock on wood, isn't the guy, they have the draft capital to go out and get another quarterback in the future. So I think they're kind of playing 4D chess in the sense that, yes, they're going to get the same guy they got at 3. They're getting a lot of draft capital, and they're also assuming that Tua is the guy, which I back. I think Tua. I think people are overhating on Tua as well. I think there's a lot of factors outside of his play that we're not talking about, and I won't get into that. But say Tua, kind of fails and doesn't do as well as we think he should year 2, and we would decide to move off of Tua. They have the draft capital to go out and either trade for a quarterback or trade to move up in the draft to take a quarterback in the future. So I think it's smart in every way.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins are the biggest winners out of this trade. I tweeted it out, but the Dolphins, they literally moved down 3 spots. They're still probably going to be able to get the top guy on their board, which was either Devontae Smith or Jamar Chase. So they were going to pick one of those guys most likely at 3. I mean, Penei Sewell was kind of in that conversation as well, but in reality, they were probably going to draft one of those 2 receivers. The way the draft is set up right now, assuming the Falcons draft quarterback, the Bengals get Penei Sewell at 5. At 6, they're still going to have an option to get their guy that they could have had at 3. And they're also adding extra draft capital in the process. So, I mean, that's just absolutely an incredible job by the Dolphins front office. And, I mean, they drafted they traded Laramie Tunsil, and they've gotten 4 first-round picks in return overall from the Laramie Tunsil trade. So, I mean, that's just the gift that keeps on giving. For the Dolphins, they're doing an incredible job, and they're set up perfectly, I believe, to make big moves in the future.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's the Dolphins all along. It's been, you got to give Tua another chance. I've never agreed with anybody who said Tua's done, right? People are like, oh, Tua's terrible. Tua's not drafted. He's a bust. And I think, okay, you got to give him talent. Go let Preston Williams get healthy. Let this team get healthy. Give him another weapon, a star weapon, and see what he can do in his second year. So that's their thought process right now, is they didn't need somebody at number 3. They didn't need a premier quarterback, so they traded back. All this trade does is show that they have the utmost confidence, or at least that they are going to give Tua a shot for the next year and for the next 2 years.
I don't understand how people can be like, or say that let's give Daniel Jones 4 years of opportunity, but just give up on Tua after 1 year.
Exactly.
The injury stuff is still his number 1 concern. It's not his talent on the field.
It's ridiculous, right? And that's why I think, okay, regardless of what other people say, all that matters is the Miami Dolphins front office. What do they believe? All these signs are pointing to them giving him another chance. Hey, he was their guy last year. Why is he not their guy this year? So they're going to give him another chance. And I guess still to keep it on the NFL real quick, the 17-game schedule. Let's talk about this real quick. A lot of players were upset saying, oh, one more game. What's the point of one more game? What are you guys' thoughts? Is this a good business move for the NFL? Is this bad? What's the pros? What's the cons? Real quick, Will, talk to me.
Okay. Overall, I think this is a long time coming for the NFL. I mean, I've heard the 17-game schedule has been like a rumor, and people have talked about this happening for like over 5 years to this point. I don't really see too much of a downside here. I think the fans, people who cover the games like us, we're going to get more, games, a whole full another week of NFL action. So we're going to have more football to enjoy, more football to cover. The NFL is going to get more revenue from ticket sales, obviously, once the stadiums are going to be filled in the coming years. And obviously, like TV money as well. They're going to get a full another week of that. The NFL cap is probably like the salary cap is probably going to go up because they're going to generate more revenue. That's how this works. So I don't really know how players would be too mad because like the way it's worked, you're still going to get a bye week. It is still another game, but the whole schedule is an additional week. So I don't really understand how that's too big of an issue. Also contracts, like if the NFL is making more revenue, then naturally players are going to get larger contracts. So I don't really see any negatives here. Personally, I think it's good for everyone involved, the players, fans, media like us, just everyone. Personally.
Max, do you have anything different?
Yeah, I mean, I just think from a business perspective, this is brilliant by the NFL for the reasons that Will stated. Obviously, ratings, the analysts and the fans have more to talk about. But I think for the players, it's a big loss. I think it's silly that in a game that's so physically demanding and so grueling like football, that they add an extra game that could potentially cause even more risk for injuries. So I think from a player perspective, it's kind of a bad decision. But I think from a business standpoint and for the fans, it's a win. So 2v1, I like that ratio for the NFL. I think that's why they decided to make that move. And ultimately, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad for I understand that for the players, but they're also like NFL is making more money. Naturally, teams are going to have more money to spend in free agency. So I think players are going to get bigger contracts. I don't know. I mean, there's kind of a give and take. Overall, it's just like you said. It's a great move for the NFL moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk a little basketball, right? I mean, we talked football for the first 37 minutes. Let's talk a little basketball. Last week was the NBA trade deadline. Personally, I'm sorry, Will. NFL is more exciting. NFL trade deadline slash NFL free agency is more exciting than NBA.
The NFL just like completely dwarfed the NBA trade deadline the day after with that trade, and I was just like, wow, all right.
It's. I'm sorry. I think I don't know why. I think the NFL is more. I don't know. You got a lot more uncertainty in the NFL. NBA is more. I mean, you got the super team. So if there's ever a huge move, it's like wow. But besides that, like the little moves don't really matter. But talk to me a little bit. I mean, we saw Nikola Vucevic go to the Chicago Bulls. We saw Aaron Gordon go to the Denver Nuggets. Who was your biggest winner? What team really, really won the trade deadline?
I think there's a few winners, but if I had to pick two of the biggest winners, I would say it's probably Max, your Miami Heat, and the Chicago Bulls were probably the two biggest winners. For the Bulls, I mean, this is like the Bulls have been able – they've kind of been like the New York Mets in baseball. Both teams are big market teams, but they don't act like it. They don't spend big money. They don't make big-time trades, and they're finally actually going out and doing that. For once, the Bulls haven't made a move like this really in like over a decade practically. So I really think it's a long time coming for the Bulls to make a move like this. Nikola Vucevic. Another thing is Levine. Zach Levine he's been adamant actually in saying he wants like a big man, a star big man to be on his team for quite some time. And this is exactly what that is. This is a great star, all-star caliber big man who's under contract for the next 3 seasons. And this hopefully will help Levine stay in Chicago long term because the future there is like we didn't really know if Zach Levine was going to stay with Chicago or not. But I think this is going to help ensure that duo is going to be there for the foreseeable future. So I think it's a big win for the Bulls. And I also think Max, your Miami Heat are big winners. I mean, they got Victor Oladipo, who's at the very least an above average starter level player. I mean, he's a former All-Star, but the injuries have kind of held him back. And they gave up like no valuable asset on their roster. I mean, Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley and a pick swap. That's all they gave up for Oladipo. So I think that's a huge win for the Miami Heat. And I think it's a kind of a big need because they didn't really have a guy who can play lockdown defense on the perimeter like Oladipo. Maybe he's not one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, but he's very good.
Scores consistently from the perimeter too.
Right, they had Dragic and Harrow and Tyler Harrow and Kendrick Nunn. None of those guys can really lock down on the perimeter. Oladipo can. He fits their culture. He's going to be another shot creator on offense. Some people have questioned the fit. I think it's a great fit for the culture and their scheme. So I think the Miami, and they got him practically for giving up nothing. They didn't give up Duncan Robinson or Tyler Harrow or anyone on that roster, or even like a first-round pick for him. So those are my two biggest winners.
No, you said it yourself. Look, and bias aside, I think the Heat were the biggest winners because the Heat, they've been very up and down this year. COVID hit them hard early in the season. They were a sub 500, below 500 team for a long time. And then obviously they went on a few winning streaks. Now they're kind of in that 4 or 5 spot in the East. And they dropped down to 7 recently because they went on a little bit of a losing streak. But the East is so wide open that, it just takes a few games consistently winning to get back into contention in the East. But, getting a guy like Victor Oladipo for what Will was talking about, it's a complete bag of chips. You just gave up a bag of Frito-Lays for a guy that can drop, 20 points a night if he really wants to. So I think that's, definitely the biggest and best move of this trade deadline. I'd say the Vucevic one is a little bit more debatable because while I do think that the Bulls obviously upgraded, I do think they gave up a lot to do so. I think they gave up a lot of future assets. They gave up Wendell Carter, who I think has a lot of promise. And yes, I think Vucevic is better than he'll ever be, but at least Wendell Carter, I think over the years can develop into someone that's a decent player. And they got 2 draft picks for him too. So, I think it's a good short-term play for Chicago, but I do think in the long term, the Magic may benefit from that trade. So that's why I'm not going to jump the gun and say the Bills won. But yes, I would be frank. I also agree with Daniel's prior point before we even started the topic. I think the NFL trade deadline, when we're talking about draft picks, which are commodities that have no value. I mean, they have value, but we don't know what's behind them, right? We don't even know what player is going to be associated with what pick. When that has more buzz than Oladipo to the Heat, I think I think there's a reason for that. And I think the trade deadline being a little bit underwhelming this year probably attributed to that because obviously we usually have way bigger trades in the trade deadline in the NBA than this. But yeah, I would say the Heat were my biggest winner, and I agree that the NFL trade deadline and free agency this year was a little bit more entertaining than that of basketballs.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I can't disagree with you there. But let's talk about something. I mean, the UFC. I've recently really been getting into UFC. It's fighting, man. I think it's man versus man, woman versus woman, mano y mano, and we had a huge fight card this past weekend. We had Sean O'Malley versus Thomas Almeida, Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou. And man, I really want to highlight the 2 fights, the title fight, obviously, and the Sean O'Malley fight. Let's start off with the O'Malley fight, a guy we interviewed a couple months back. He looked absolutely flawless, man. I mean, could have put away Almeida in round 1, I believe, knocked him down, just kind of walked off. He wanted the highlight reel knockout, but didn't work out. Then round 3, absolutely killer knockout punch. Max, talk to me. What did you see out of this fight, and what does this bode for his future in the UFC?
I think this is the definition of a tune-up comeback fight. And what I mean by that is, Sean O'Malley went into the Chito Vera fight a few months ago, undefeated, had all the hype in the world, and then he was a foot injury away from getting knocked out, and that's what happened, right? So the hype kind of died down a little bit. And the UFC, wanted him to be back in his winning ways. And you want to give a guy like that a tune-up fight so he doesn't lose too much confidence. So you give him a guy in Almeida who is the definition of a tune-up fight. The guy has not won a fight since 2016. We all expected, Sean O'Malley to take care of business, and that he did, and he looked great doing it. So there's rumors out there that Dominic Cruz may want to fight with Sean O'Malley, and I don't know if Sean O'Malley wants a part of that or wants a piece of that, but I think it would be great for his resume if he were to beat a guy, a former world champion in Dominic Cruz. I don't know. I would say Sean O'Malley's ready for that fight. I don't know if it's the smart fight to take. Maybe it would be wiser to take 1 or 2 more kind of I don't know if I wouldn't call them tune-up fights, but fights where you can get a little bit more momentum than, because I think the jump between Almeida and Dominic Cruz is quite a significant one. So it would be an interesting fight to see as a fan. And I think if Sean O'Malley were to win that, he would be right back to the hype. The hype would be at an all-time high if he beat a guy like Dominic Cruz. So I'm interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hyped for O'Malley. You know, he's our guy. We did an interview with him. You can go back on our YouTube channel and check that out. And you mentioned it, Max. Like his last fight, he just seemed out of his element. And sure, the injury played a factor as well. But last time, but he didn't really feel. He just felt in control, and with all the swag and confidence that he has, he felt like he all displayed that, and we all saw it throughout the fight. It's kind of a double-edged sword for him sometimes. Sometimes it can be good, but sometimes it can help him, hurt him because he can lose his focus, even though it's only happened once. But this time we saw really just the good end of that. The good end of that sword is still extremely sharp. And you see he can still tap in and be focused. So I thought it was a huge, big-time fight for him, and it's going to propel him to potentially continue to rise up those rankings with maybe the fights that he has coming up.
Yeah, I don't know. I just watching him was awesome. It was just really good. I was happy for him, right? Just to see him bounce back in a big way, and because he has the talent, he has the talent, he has the personality, he's exciting, he's what the sport needs, and I think we'll see how he does. And let's talk about the title fight, right? Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic. Wow. Max. Wow. I don't know. I don't really recall who your prediction was for that fight, but the biggest thing is in the previous fight, Miocic absolutely cleaned up Ngannou. He was far more the technical fighter. He absolutely had a far better game plan. But in this fight, Ngannou showed some leg kicks. He showed defense. Like he looked great. It looked absolutely unstoppable. And before I let you go real quick, Max, I think Daniel Cormier said something that was really, really intriguing, right? He said, this is what the sport needs. This is what the heavyweight title, the fighter has to look like, because he was like, there's a lot of people that look like Daniel Cormier. There's a lot of people that look like Stipe Miocic, right? 6'4", 250 pounds white. But when you see Francis Ngannou on the street, you are like, wow, 280 pounds, absolutely ripped. And he has the talent to back it up. Max, what were your thoughts on the fight?
Well, I predicted it completely wrong. I thought that Stipe was going to come in and have a very similar game plan and control the fight on the ground like he did the first time around. The difference was this Ngannou, instead of going in impatient trying to get the knockout, he worked on his takedown defense. He was, to Nader's point, incredibly patient and was expecting Miocic to try to control the fight on the ground. And as soon as he stopped that takedown attempt early on, I knew it was game over for Stipe. Another thing I want to note is that Stipe was significantly lighter this time around than he was the first fight. I want to say he weighed in at 234 or 244, something around there, whereas Ngannou was about 264, 265, and could have been even heavier the night of the fight. So, I think that played a role too. I remember Miocic kind of described the reason why he was lighter as because if you guys remember, the trilogy with Daniel Cormier went that he lost the first fight to Daniel Cormier by knockout. What he did was he completely refined his game plan, dropped down a few pounds in weight, and his whole game plan was to kind of outgas, or I guess prolong the fight so that Daniel Cormier would gas out sooner than him, which worked to his benefit 2 times because he beat him 2 times in a row. But against a guy like Ngannou, who's a physical freak of nature and has that much size on you, it was kind of a gamble that unfortunately did not pay off for him. And I think that the point that you made about the heavyweight division UFC needing a guy like Ngannou, I disagree with the part that you mentioned that there's a lot of guys like Miocic. No, I think there's only one Miocic, and I think he's the GOAT of the heavyweight division as of now. But I do think that Ngannou, he has that Mike Tyson-esque presence to him, right? That every single time he fights, he's capable of knocking the head off of any opponent he fights. So anybody with that power and to your point, that appearance, right? The guy is like 6'5", 265, probably like less than 5% body fat. The guy is shredded. And that's just intimidating to look at, and the power that he brings to every fight. I think they measured it one time on Sports Science that he hits as hard as it would be as the impact of like getting hit by a small car. I mean, it's incredible how much power this guy has. So, if he's going to fight smart, the way he fought Stipe was the perfect way for Ngannou to have a long title run. Because let me tell you something. If Ngannou starts becoming impatient and trying to find the finish, that's how he'll lose a quick fight or lose his first fight coming up probably against John Jones. But if he, maintains his patience, works on his ground game, and knows when to strike and how to be methodical with his strikes, this is the most technical. I remember I said last week, he's one of the most least technical fighters I've ever seen. And what I meant by that was he just swings wildly. He just tries to punch wildly until he connects with one because he could knock anybody out. You did not see that in that fight against Stipe. That is the best version of Francis. And if Francis decides to go into every fight as champion, being patient, being methodical, being more technical, we can have a champion in Francis Ngannou for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, Ngannou, he dominated the GOAT of heavyweight. It was extremely impressive. To your point, a lot of us, we did think that, Ngannou was more of a brute, and all he really had was just that power. But I think he proved that he has so much more than that. He showed the patience and control throughout the fight, and he made Stipe look like how we thought that Ngannou could look, with just overreaching and just violent punches without any control. He made Stipe look like that. Stipe just was all offense practically. And it wasn't good offense at all. He was just running on his heels the entire time. But he just made Stipe overreach, and he got knockout hungry, which is exactly what we potentially thought Ngannou was going to look. And then he ended up making him pay with just the patience and the ground game, like you mentioned. So extremely impressive. And I'm really excited to see Ngannou potentially fight John Jones. That's going to be a heck of a fight.
Yeah, I don't know. UFC's it's intriguing, man. I love the fact that we're getting our guys into it, right? There was first to just start off with you, Max, and then we had Dorian and Malik, obviously, but now everyone's getting involved, and I love it, right? But
becoming a top 5 sport in this country very quickly.
It is very quickly. Show, man.
It's entertaining, right? And for me, it's been the journey of following these storylines and actually watching these fights and being like, hey, I remember watching that guy 6 months ago. I remember how he lost and he came back, and it's the repetition, just getting into the sport. I love it. And let's
the fights aren't only entertaining, but it's just like the figures behind the sport are extremely entertaining. That's the biggest thing for me.
And the press conferences and just listening to like guys like Joe Rogan, like Dana White's press conferences, Joe Rogan, like Daniel Cormier, like all these guys. It's such an interesting sport. And I don't know, everyone should definitely, if you're interested in watching fighting, because I know it's brutal, but if you're interested, it's such an amazing sport. But let's finish off with March Madness. And right now, Gonzaga is beating the doors off of USC right now. So it's going to be Gonzaga. And the only, I believe, Elite Eight is Michigan versus UCLA. And then you have Baylor versus Houston. So just real quick, guys, is Gonzaga going to win this thing? Are they going to go undefeated the whole entire season? Does UCLA make a run, or just talk to me?
I just saw the score of this Gonzaga game. Oh my goodness!
Listen, I think Gonzaga's going to win the whole thing. I think Baylor can make some noise because I think Houston, and I don't know the history behind this, but if someone wants to fact check me, go ahead. I don't think I've ever seen an easier path to the Final Four than Houston this year. They played all double-digit seeds every single game this entire tournament, and this is not a shot on Houston. Houston's a good team, but I don't know if they would have made the Final Four if they would have played, a number 1 seed or higher leading up to their run to the Final Four. So, but credit to them, they made it happen. Unfortunately, I think it's going to end when they play Baylor. But I do think this is the year for Gonzaga to win the national championship, go undefeated. Although I think me and all college basketball fans alike would love to see UCLA pull off the upset and be a double-digit seed in the Final Four. We haven't seen that in quite a bit, probably since Loyola, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm tuned in. This is a really exciting tournament so far, and but yeah, I would have to say Gonzaga is probably my favorite to win it all right now.
Yeah, I think for the Michigan UCLA, I'm going to pick Michigan. That's obviously tonight, I believe, at around 10 o'clock. So be tuned in for that game. Baylor versus Houston. I agree. Houston. I won't lie. I mean, I wasn't expecting them to get this far. I had West Virginia beating them in my bracket, but West Virginia didn't even make it to Houston, and they've shown a lot of grit, and they've definitely impressed me and overshot my expectations, and so has Baylor as well. I thought Baylor – I kind of let what's happened to Baylor in the past judge how I thought they do this tournament, and that was a mistake because Baylor has been really a top 2 to 3 team this entire year, and they've played exactly their style of ball in the tournament. So I think Baylor will beat Houston. I think they're just a better team. Jared Butler and Davion Mitchell they're going to be first-round NBA picks, in my opinion. I mean, every single time I watch Davion Mitchell play, I'm getting more and more sold on him as an NBA prospect. So he's put on a show in the tournament, really all season long. Ultimately, I think this is leading up to the Gonzaga-Baylor championship game. The top two teams, they've been there all season long at number 1 and 2 in the AP poll. And they've really been the two best teams in the country. Yeah, Baylor had a few slip-ups against Oklahoma State in the tournament and other places as well. They're not a perfect team. Gonzaga is looking more and more like the perfect team. But I think that could be a battle for the ages because they're the two best teams. And I wasn't sure that we were going to get it because, usually in the tournament, the best team doesn't – it's just Kentucky. They were undefeated, 38-0, and then they lost to Wisconsin. It just doesn't
Devin
happen.
Booker off the bench. And they lost to Frank Kaminsky and Sam Dekker.
I mean, this Gonzaga team is this Gonzaga team is not necessarily. They have a chance to be better than that Kentucky team. Roster-wise, the Kentucky team, they had NBA players coming off their bench. That's insane. But Gonzaga has the perfect opportunity to put it all together. They're going to beat USC. I think they'll beat Michigan as well. So Gonzaga-Baylor championship game. I think it could be a battle for the ages.
Don't sleep on the electric factory that is the mullet man from Baylor. Don't sleep on him.
I'm excited to see Jalen Suggs. He's going to be a top 5 pick. I think he's top 3 player in the class with Mobley and Cade Cunningham. I'm excited to see him on the big stage in the Final Four. That's going to be extremely exciting.
Guys, it's March Madness. It's here. And I mean, let's pray for the sake of madness that UCLA wins. I hope that they do, man. I mean, I want to see the number 11 seed hit the Final Four, maybe make a run. But as you guys talked about, Gonzaga, it's just absolutely dominating all year long, right? And it's kind of heading towards a chalk championship where it's going to be Baylor versus Gonzaga. We want to see it. That's the match we wanted to see, and we'll see. But I think it's been a great tournament so far. We've had a lot of madness go on. Loyola Chicago, we've had a lot of upsets, but regardless, I think it's been a great tournament so far. And yeah, that does it, guys. I mean, we covered a lot. We talked about the
Falcons. I was going to say, one thing about Gonzaga is they literally have, Andrew Nembhard comes off their bench, and he was Florida's star player as a freshman and sophomore, and he transferred, and he's literally coming off Gonzaga's bench. That's how good this Gonzaga team is. They have Corey Kispert's going to be a lottery pick. Suggs is top 5. They have other guys off – in their starting lineup.
And they also have a lot of size.
Yeah.
So they can compete with Baylor that is so guard heavy. They have the size to compete with Baylor.
Joel Ayayi is probably going to be a second-round pick. It's just insane. Gonzaga's they could honestly, if they go undefeated, they could be the best collegiate team of all time.
Get them out of their conference, man. They need to be in a different conference. Put them in the Pac-12 or something. But guys, it's been a great show. Talked about a lot of energy. Loved it today. If you guys are still with us, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, right? We got a lot of great content on here with the draft coming up. We have a lot of stuff coming up, but we got NFL, NBA, MLB, soccer, all that stuff. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, on Twitter at TWSN. And Max wants to say something. Let's hear this.
Oh, I want to plug something. So this Saturday is the debut of our TWSN soccer show. It's going to be myself, Christian DeBlock, Joe Camarota. It's going to be a great show. We're going to be talking a lot about the upcoming Champions League games. If you guys are into soccer, especially European soccer and the U.S. men's national team, guys should give us a watch. It's going to be 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday on the YouTube channel.
Wait, didn't the U.S. men's national team not qualify?
That's the what was it? The under 21s. They qualified for the Olympics.
I don't qualify.
Yeah.
I was just wondering.
No, you're good,
man.
Yeah.
See, we got diversity here. We got a lot of different things, a lot of different sports. But guys, as always, you guys know what it is. The show goes on. We'll see you guys next Tuesday night.